Want to start all-out war at your next family gathering? Try pitting boomers against millennials in pretty much any conversation about money or housing, or education for that matter. That's what's happening on a national scale as the coalition zeroes in on retirees and their nest eggs.
It's a grey army ready to go to war.
We're not interested in silly political nonsense.
Even with themselves. And the Liberal Party is leading the charge, whipping baby boomers into a franking frenzy over Labor's plan to ditch franking credit refunds. So, what the hell is a franking credit? Let's say you've got some shares in Tommy's Teabags Proprietary Limited. Now, from this year's profits, Tommy wants to pay you and the shareholders a dividend. But first, he has to pay corporate tax. So, to avoid tax being paid twice, franking credits allow you to claim the tax he paid against your income.
In practice, here's how it works. If you're a self-funded retiree, most of your money might be tied up in shares and you technically receive a low income. So you don't pay much, if any, tax, but through franking credits, you actually get a tax refund from the government. Now that's a pretty sweet deal. And Australia is one of the only places in the world you can get it.
Australian taxpayers return $5.9 billion every year in franking credit refunds. Labor says that mainly goes to the wealthy, and it wants to spend that money elsewhere.
I now get to lose 25 to 30% of my income, which means that I'm no longer going to be able to maintain the lifestyle and the income that I've become accustomed to. It's highly un-Australian, it's very unfair, and it's highly discriminatory.
We've had a system for quite a while that's been benefiting older Australians, and they've profited from it. But actually what we need to do is start investing that back into our future, back into young people.
Retirees say it's unfair to move the goalposts.
Planning is something that takes 10 to 15 years. You can't just change the rules and say it doesn't matter.
I'd like to know where all the young people are here, because it's their inheritance that's going to be decimated.
Where are all the young people? They're trying to find a job. They're trying to put a roof over their head. They're trying to make enough money to make sure that we get tax cuts for self-funded retirees.
So, as the grey army grows and battle lines are drawn, whose side are you on?
Well, Tim Wilson is the Liberal MP opposed to these changes and is behind the franking credits inquiry, where we saw those explosive scenes. Now, Tim, can you explain to us why you think it's fair that we as taxpayers give people a refund on tax that they never paid in the first place?
Well, because that's the myth. They actually have paid the tax. That's why they get a tax credit. And then it's used against their income and they assess them and they get a refund. And the reason this idea is so bad is because it directly hits people who've already retired, so they can't change their circumstances. But it also creates this separate group of people, this discrimination in the tax system, and that's wrong. In exactly the same way, if you're under the tax-free threshold because you're earning a low amount of money, and you have too much tax paid on your behalf, you're entitled to your full tax refund.
But can you see how this looks to younger Australians who are struggling to get into the housing market? They're trying to pay off their HECS to get ahead, and it seems like older Aussies are just getting more and more cash coming their way.
And I can completely understand that perception, and that's why at every point I have supported comprehensive tax reform to address the deep structural injustices in the tax system, and there are deep structural injustices, but this is not one of them and has huge consequences for Australian retirees, and that's why it's important to stand up and fight against bad policy and bad law.
Tim, we obviously do need to ask a bit about your role in this whole inquiry.
Sure.
You're heading it up. I understand that you're an investor in something called Wilson Asset Management, which looks after some of these retirees. Is that a conflict of interest?
No, because this is actually about tax policy. Almost every member of Parliament, in fact, I think all would have shares who are all in exactly the same boat. There's no difference. The difference is whether you're about to retire or not. I don't know if you look, but I'm pretty good on the wrinkle scale, about 38. So I'll retire in about 30 to 40 years. Then it would affect me, and then there would be an issue.
But isn't there a question about whether you're related to the guy that runs this particular organisation?
Sure, but I mean,
So you
if you
are?
go back, hang on, if you go back to the 1850s, you can establish a connection, but he's not impacted on it by it either. The share value isn't impacted by it.
You're an investor in it and you're related to the guy, and clearly there is an interest for this company in what the outcome of this inquiry is, isn't there?
No, that's completely false.
Why?
Because in the end, there is no effect on the value of the shares or the yield they return. This is solely about the tax people are paying, and I'm paying a 45% tax rate. So there is no way in hell I'm I'm getting a refund. This is the great myth, and it's a deliberate campaign to smear me because Labor want to shut me down, shut the inquiry down, so they can shut down the voices of older Australians who don't want their tax refunds stolen from them by a Labor government.
All right, Tim, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks for your time this evening.
Thanks for having me.